z gościnnym udziałem dwóch sióstr, dwóch syrenek.
Srebrnej i złotej. Brawa!
Przystojne, prawda?
Hey, welcome to MovieStrange episode 32. How are you, Drew?
I'm good. How are you doing, Ralph?
Good. Now that we have our head sizes figured out, everything is great. I feel good about this.
That's right.
How's your week going? How's things?
Really good, actually. Work
Job
is really
still
good.
plugging away? Job still plugging away?
Yeah, job still plugging away. Got my home gym rolling right along.
What?
Making space, setting stuff up. Pretty excited about that.
Wow, that's good for you.
Yeah,
Good for
pretty
you.
excited about that.
Oh my God, that's so ambitious. It's a good thing because COVID's
Well, I'm
driving me. I'm feeling a
very
little
young.
like, what's that?
I'm very young, so
You're very young. You skew young. You do skew young.
that's cute. Yeah.
I'm feeling a
I'm
little
like
like Jack Torrance in The Shining. I'm starting to have
well,
like I'm home alone a lot lately because the kids are working and out, and I'm just talking to myself, and my thoughts are just like it's just too much. It's too much.
Well, you're more alone than than everybody is, just because your whole job is in the basement, and I'm not. For a while I was feeling COVID's coming to get us again. I'm not sure if people are going to be smart enough, and maybe we'll get lucky and we won't have to completely lock down. But some of you in your jobs, when you have been proving for more than a year, you don't need to go to an office very often. So maybe you won't. Ever.
Well, but they're still pushing everything to get us back. They want everybody back. I don't really understand why, but and I'm not 100%. I'm 50-50. Like I don't like being at home all the time, but I also don't want to commit. We go through this every time. But let's talk about this happy film that I picked the words for. These are the two sets of words, but ultimately Drew did this, so I picked this film, which I'm thrilled he did because I've been wanting to watch this film for a long time.
You've not picked it several times, so I said, I'm going to give this to Ralph.
So finally you did it. Well, okay. Tell us what the film is, Drew.
The film is 2015's Korki Dancingu, or The Lore. That's the Polish title, which is, there you go.
Oh, look at the poster. This is the Polish poster.
Yep.
Because I guess they don't have horror movies in Poland, right? If this is what I read. I did deep dives on this film. This is the American,
you have to tell us.
Or the U.S. version, which is a little more creepy and a little more what the movie's about. I mean, both these posters are what the movie's about, but this one is more what it's about. So why don't you tell us, Drew, what's this movie about?
Well, it's your classic movie with some mermaids that come out of the water and they become stars at a nightclub, and they want to eat people, and it's a musical. So, you probably think, oh, I've seen that before, but it's actually a really interesting, special, ambitious movie. We've got, I think, a lot of stuff to talk about because it fires on a lot of cylinders at once. It's a first film, this director.
Oh, really?
It's her first film.
Yeah.
And just the evolution of what the film was originally going to be, which was a biography of kids that grew up in nightclubs, and that became too personal a project for the people it was based on. So they said, well, why don't we add mermaids? And they eat people. And the sisters were like, okay, let's do it. And then they ended up writing the music for the movie as well.
Oh, wow.
So I will say right from the beginning, in spite of all the weird things in the movie, and I think the genuine horror and all that kind of stuff, I will say I feel like this movie is very, very Polish in the sense that I know I miss things.
I was hoping you'd help me with some things.
I may be able to with some of it.
If you miss them,
I mean,
how the hell am I? I have no chance.
It's not because I like or don't like learning about movies. It's because it's very culturally where it's from, which is really neat, because then I learned some things about.
Yeah, I learned that after deep diving on the film. After I saw the film, that there's some things in here that I never would have picked up on. Why don't we show the trailer and then we can talk about it after the trailer?
Let's do it.
Here we go.
Wyciągnijcie nas, nie bójcie się, Przecież was nie zjemy. Wyjemy, wyjemy, wyjemy. Wyjemy, wyjemy, wyjemy.
A to jest lokal nocny z napojami wysokoalkoholowymi i tańcem.
Właściwie to są dzieci mojej dobrej znajomej.
Będą robiły u nas chórki i striptizy.
Musicie się tylko dobrze bawić, reszta pójdzie sama.
Dobry wieczór bardzo szanownemu państwu. Przed państwem córki dancingu. Dwóch syrenek.
Przyszłam do miasta. Chciałam pokazać się z najlepszej strony. Zmienić coś, zmienić. Zwrócić uwagę. Zwróciłam wszystko. Szum, szum, szum samochodów i ulic. Zawrót głowy, zostajemy, nie ma mowy. Szum, szum, szum samochodów i ulic. Zawrót głowy, zostajemy, nie ma mowy. Miasto wyjaśni, czego nam jest brak.
Chodź, muszę coś powiedzieć. Oszalałem.
That's actually a pretty good trailer for
Yeah.
the vibe and mix of tones and the music. That's all music from the movie, which I've been listening to all week, even though it's hard for me to sing along. So I dug that trailer. That was good.
Well,
sometimes the trailers that we watch are completely disconnected from what the actual movie is, but that was pretty good.
Well, this film starts with a Donna Summer song. I mean, the very first thing you see in that nightclub is that the woman with the curly blonde hair singing a Donna Summer song, or a variation of a Donna Summer. Anyway, so go ahead, explain a little bit, and then let's get into some of the fascinating details about, or just our feelings, and then the details about the film. But
well, all right. So there are certain things that I knew going into it from watching the movie. That the original story of The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen. I remember there were two stories that I read a lot growing up. I read a lot of fairy tales and different things, but the two stories were The Swan by Roald Dahl, short story, and The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen. They were both really brutal and tragic. And even though the end of the Little Mermaid story is that the Little Mermaid loses everything, but then instead of dying and turning into sea foam, and that's the end of her life, she becomes a spirit and she can do more stuff for 300 years, which honestly sounds horrible. This movie leans into the tragedy of the ending of that story, because they don't really show you in the Disney movie the way that the story was written when she gives up her voice to get her legs. It feels like a sword is going into her everywhere she walks and dances without her voice as a human. It feels like walking on knives. Like the whole thing is very brutal. And the way they do things like that in this movie, I mean, there's a direct scene where one of the mermaids gives up her tail and gets legs, and it is crazy Cronenberg body horror nastiness, and totally appropriate. So the movie is it's got just a lot of things going on with Polish history, with music, with the fairy tale, things to say about women and the men that exploit them. It's just a really absorbing, weird movie.
You're getting into the subtext, or I guess it's text of the film, which is the history of Poland, the 1980s in Poland, which I guess this is when this is supposed to take place. The labor movement and the women's movement in Poland, I guess. Women were developing a bigger role, or trying to develop a bigger role. And this movie tapped into what you're talking about, which is the exploitation of women, and how they flip it by bringing mermaids in who, when they sing, humans can't resist the singing because it's so beautiful. Men dive into the sea and get eaten by them. What they do in this nightclub is, as they're singing and becoming singing stars, right? They come into, everybody in the place is dancing. Everybody is into what's going on. They're all happy, and so there's that, right? And as you know, is it a musical? Yes. Is it a horror movie? Yes. Is it a romance? Yes. It's kind
Is
of
it a coming of age story? Yes.
Yes. It's definitely a romantic comedy without much comedy. I mean, I was confused watching it and frustrated. At first, I'm like, oh, listen, the music is so dead on. They're singing about dancing in the street. But then I go, wait, West Side Story. You know, the Jets are going to get the Sharks tonight. I mean, those musicals are just telling you everything that's going on in the film.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you may or may not ultimately like the songs. And I'll be honest with you. I can't imagine the challenge of translating lyrics from a musical into another language and being able to really convey the experience, because subtitling a foreign language, you lose enough in a film, but singing and the way that things are written and the way that they rhyme and the colloquialisms and all that stuff, I mean, I know we missed some of that stuff. So some of the stuff I think gets translated as what you were saying. It feels a little on the nose. But I don't blame that as much on it. That's how musicals are, as it's just got to be hard. So
you're probably right. You're probably that the translations were more on the nose than maybe the actual what they were singing in the. And it all takes place in a nightclub. The color palette in this film, again, is opposite of what you would expect from a horror movie, right? Because it's beautiful. It's neon and it's very garish and very 80s. And the scenes in the nightclub with the chains that come down, and there's this one woman, I guess, who's a stripper or something. I don't quite get. There's many different people.
There's a lot of different acts. It's basically a cabaret, nightclub, strip club, dance club.
Right, but you have to get past the first part, which is these people find two mermaids and bring them into the nightclub, and that mermaids can have legs at one point, although they have no. They're atomic. They look like Barbie dolls, basically. There's no, they have breasts, but nothing else. You pour water on their legs and their tail, the 6-foot tail grows.
Right.
The tail actually has, I think they can stick their hands inside something on the tail. It smells.
All right. Well, let's back up. Let's back up because. All right. So the concept of the mermaids in the movie, I think they are conflated, this is not a criticism, with the idea of sirens, which is what you see in the trailer when they're singing, "Come into the water, we promise we won't eat you." I mean, sirens are the female monsters that lure men to their deaths, lure them off the side of the ship, that kind of stuff. That's a totally, good mix with the mermaids in the movie. That makes sense, because not all mermaids in classic stories are carnivorous, and these guys certainly are. But when we first meet them, they do look like Barbie dolls, and then you sprinkle water on them and they grow their tails. And it's a little unclear, but basically fish, like birds, they have a cloaca, they have a single orifice. So I think what they're doing is feeling up the young girls' tails to find the cloaca. Now, the idea of, oh, look, young women, men get more interested when the young women get wet. I mean, this movie is not subtle. These men are gross and older and exploiting them, and some of them get what's coming to them for that. And the girls are genuinely innocent. They're very young. They have no reason to feel shame about being naked, or at least
they're animals. They're animals. Animals don't know they're naked. Animals don't know they're naked. They're just that's so. And one kid even says, the guy who's the guitarist, the bassist, whatever he is, like, I don't want to have Meatek. I don't want to be with you. You're an animal. And that's the mermaid
he says to
Golden, or the Silver and Golden.
Yeah, there's
the
Silver and Golden are the two mermaids. Silver is the one with the lighter hair, and she's the one who falls in love with Meatek and wants to get rid of her tail and have legs permanently and become a human. And Golden is her raven-haired, I guess, sister. I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean,
it really matters.
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're bound together clearly in the story, and they have very different goals and very different approaches to life, to what they want out of being on the surface. It's clear that the mermaids in the movie, the world of the movie, that it's not unusual for them to come out of the water, explore, eat, then go back. And that's part of the original Little Mermaid story too, is that I guess once a year a mermaid can go and have like the Amish have Rumspringa. You can go and check stuff out and then you come back. Except I think that these two mermaids extend their visit longer than they probably planned on doing it, and that's why the movie gets more. The two of them are more divided, and the movie gets like more nutty, frankly, as the stakes are raised as to whether they're going to live and what's going to happen.
Because the movie is about forbidden love. It's about love. It's about losing love. There's so many things going on in it. This is, I mean, look at us. We're throwing darts at every.
It's a lot,
right? And at first, 3/4 of the film, there's scenes that happen, like you were saying, that I don't quite understand what was happening. Now, by the end, it gets a little more clear and a little more cliche. Okay, when you find out that if the person you're in love with gets married, you have to eat him before the day.
So
right. So it becomes more lore. That's
from the
not
story.
Lore, but lore.
Right. That's from the story. If the mermaid becomes human, gets her legs, and she falls in love, in theory, she doesn't have to fall in love, but basically in the story, why would you give up everything except for love? That's why you got your legs in the first place. She says, I'm going to get real legs and a real pussy, because having a vagina and having legs, that will make her human, and that will make this boy Metek love her. Which of course doesn't work. Right. But the premise is just, again, like the story, if that man that the mermaid loves marries another woman, then she will die by sunrise the day after the wedding.
Turn into foam.
Turn into sea foam.
Sea foam.
Yeah. And I remember that story vividly from reading it when I was a kid, and the way that they spin that story out in the movie it's very moving, actually. It's really intense. And then instead of the ending being what it is in the original story, which is this is a tragedy that has a happy ending because she survives. And that's a different conversation about how weird that ending is. But you can turn into wind and fly around and keep men cool for 300 years or whatever. But the movie takes a different turn, and that we'll spoil the ending, that the mermaid Silver is in the arms of the man that she loves that has just married someone else, and she turns into foam and gold.
She decides. There's a scene where she has her
decides
fangs
not.
out.
That's right. She decides not to eat him. That's right. So just like the story, the Little Mermaid decided not to stab the prince.
But that's when I knew. I knew then. That's when it became a cliche. That's when I knew it was going to happen. Right then, I was like, not then. Before that, I knew that she wasn't going to eat him.
Right.
Because she loved
That's the story. That's the original story.
And then I also knew the next thing that was going to happen was the other one was going to jump on him, because I saw the white suit. What looks better in blood than what? And the only person that was true to themselves in this whole film was Golden, the dark-haired mermaid.
Yep.
She never. She just liked to eat guys. She would hit on guys, do the siren song, get them interested, take them in the car and eat them.
Yeah, she had no compunction or shame about eating human hearts, and and
then they had that super sexy girl on mermaid sex scene, with
a police officer. Right, a police officer picks her up, and it's unusual because there are a couple of different sex scenes in the movie, but the sex scenes for Silver with the boy that she loves, one of them is when she gets herself in the tub and grows her tail, and he looks like he's going to climb on top, and that's when he says the line that you mentioned earlier, "You're always going to be an animal to me," which to me would have been, if I was Silver, I guess this isn't going to work out. Instead,
at that point,
she's going to win. But the sex scene between Golden and this police officer, there are a number of characters that appear in one scene, seem important, and then we never see them again.
Yeah, there's one of them.
But that scene it's a lot more even. It's two people who seem to want to be there for the same reason. They have similar goals. They seem to be enjoying the intensity, and then it's over. And that's just a more adult way of thinking about someone that you are attracted to than someone doesn't love me, so I love them so much I'll give up my whole life, which is what you were supposed to get out of the original story, that's what a young girl is supposed to do. You're supposed to find that kind of true love. And Golden would probably enjoy eating the heart of Hans Christian Andersen if given a chance.
She was, like I said, she was the only true character in the whole film.
Right, but she didn't eat that woman. Not just because she's a woman, but because they had an encounter. She wanted something else from her. They had a good time. Now, there's probably something to be said about communist Poland police state activity, and a comment on the kind of encounter that they had, and how it started with essentially a policewoman harassing golden for no real reason. But then they start singing and then they have sex and they seem to have a pleasant time. But you have to remember this, we mentioned this is set in Poland in the mid 80s, which was a time of despair. They didn't know 5 or 6 years later that the wall was going to fall and that Lech Walesa was going to become the leader of Poland instead of the leader of Solidarność, which was oppressed by the communist government. Like all of these changes are ahead. And this is the period right before when everybody is sure that this is just awful and it's always going to be like this, which is a really kind of interesting time because I know at some point all of us will live through that time or through multiple versions of that time and not quite know what it was like and what it was going to be like when everything changed. And that's this world, and this world is sad and weird, and to the mermaids full of wonder and danger. And the movie is very emotional. I think they definitely went for the feel of certain things and certain scenes as being more important than absolute narrative clarity.
Well,
I think that's fine.
But they coupled that with stream of consciousness scenes that, like you said, scenes just pop out of nowhere. One person's here, the next time they're not. And specifically, there's a scene, and I need help with this one. Okay. And maybe you don't know, maybe you can't help, but there's a scene
if we're thinking of the same thing, I can't help you, but go ahead.
Well, I think it's a family. The main woman, the woman who is the singer. So there's two guys, there's a drummer and there's a bass player and there's a lead singer. Is she the mother?
Yep.
Did she have a relationship with the bass player, or was that the mother of the bass player?
I don't know if she's. I didn't read it as actually his mother, but I read that as they were a family unit, and so
that's what I read as a family unit,
which is why so naturally the two young women show up, and she becomes their mom too.
Right.
To the point where later in the movie, and it's also in the trailer, she has a vision of herself suckling,
breastfeeding them. Yes,
the two mermaids, and she has a tail herself. So again, not subtle, but very striking. But yeah, I think you're going to talk about the scene where they all seem to get sick and then somebody revives them. And
correct.
I'll be honest, I don't know what's happening.
Okay, good. So that wasn't me just being ignorant and not knowing.
It could be both of us being ignorant, but
it looked like they all died, and then someone comes in with IV bottles.
Yep.
This is now there's a extra scene in the Criterion thing where she actually says something to the two mermaids as she walks in. She calls them whores or something. I forget.
That wasn't the woman who revives everyone?
Yes, that wasn't in the cut that I watched, but it's one of the extended scenes.
Were we supposed to recognize her from something else? Like I
think she's the woman who's the stripper, or the woman who dances in front of them in the lacy, that.
Oh, okay.
I think that's who that is. She's part of that extended family that even the weird dude who runs the thing, he does that nice little thing where he uses his knee and he taps them on the butt as they're ready to go out and perform. There's some weird, quirky stuff going on. But that scene in particular, I couldn't. It threw me off. It's like, why? Should I know what that means? Are they dead? Are they alive? And I think is it the next scene that they throw the rugs? The mermaids over the bridge into the rug with the rugs that they try to get rid of them.
Well, the drummer punches the two mermaids in the face. They get bloody noses. Apparently, they died. Then they throw the bodies off a bridge and they're all sad. And then the girls are in the water. So then they come back. There's a lot of stuff like that. And, that section of the movie, but the whole movie is not at all incoherent or anything like that. But
it catches up with itself. It catches up with itself.
All those little details of the club, that is from the life of the two women who are composers and musicians, have their own band, who wrote the music. That is the original concept of the movie, is that they grew up in these clubs that their parents ran and performed at and things like that. So I'm sure that little ritual where he bumps you in the butt with his thigh as you go on stage, I'm sure that's something that they saw. And the two women are actually in the movie. The band at the wedding at the end is fronted by two women, and those are the two real sisters, though. I think they're Bronska sisters who wrote the music and everything. So they're actually in the movie as well. But yeah, that's why it feels very lived in. It feels very weird. And apparently the club that they shot in was a real club from that era that had been empty for a long time and nobody had done anything with it. And the filmmakers were able to get a permit to shoot and they went in and it's just as it was.
Wow.
I mean, nobody had torn stuff out, had redeveloped it. They just cleaned it up and then they were back in the nightclub. So the movie, it's such a weird movie to have ever been able to get made at all. And I think they got lucky to make it the way they made it. The casting is pretty incredible for these young women as the mermaids. They only took a month to shoot the whole thing. I mean, like it's really quite a story.
They
and then
shot that whole film in 1 month.
Internationally acclaimed. Yeah.
Wow.
And an internationally acclaimed film.
Well, and it's on the Criterion. I watched it I streamed it on the Criterion Collection. So that somebody thinks this thing is, and I mean, it is. It caught me a little bit off guard. Like I said, that scene we're talking about where the liquid IV, whatever the hell she did to revive them, just threw me off. I said, what did I miss? I missed something. Something's going on here. I can't quite. So, you take a little bit to kind of catch up. So you're missing other stuff as you're trying to do that. We forget there's one other character we're not talking about, which is the fish guy.
Oh yes, someone else, a man who came out of the sea and wants to stay on the land. And
right, he's talking about the hooks that have been pulled out of his head, and he's now a punk rock guy, and how rock and roll. That's the other thing. The other subtext is rock and roll allows people to be free, and punk rock. And one of the mermaids is her biggest success is singing this punk rock band with this guy.
Well, it's not though, because when they go off stage, she is like, "Oh my God, that was incredible!" And he said, "You need a lot of practice."
Right.
So,
but she was feeling great.
Was cool, but she had a great time. She definitely. They both ride on emotions.
Yeah,
both of the characters. And I think that's essentially a version of that. They are animals and they ride on instinct rather than thinking about stuff. Although there's certainly enough human beings in the movie that also do things on instinct.
Yeah,
and make decisions that cost them their lives and things like that. But I don't know. I think what's interesting for me having you watch this movie is that you've wanted to watch this movie for some time. And I'm going to guess that whatever you thought this movie was going to be, it wasn't this.
100%. You're 100% right. 100%.
But it's really something special. Because when I first saw it and I heard about it, I had certain expectations as to what it would be. And except for some of the body horror stuff, when they show you the tails of these girls for the first time, I mean, these were full on like 6 or 7 foot prosthetic attachments.
Not cute, not Little Mermaid cute with the hourglass shape and all that.
Yeah, the club owner first meets them when he's like, "Why does it smell in my club? What is that smell? What is that fishy smell?" And later in the movie, someone is accused of maybe having had a sexual encounter with someone. I think it's the drummer, and the woman who I guess it's his girlfriend at certain points in the movie, the mom of the
it's his wife because he takes his wedding ring off. I mean, that's the whole thing.
That's right.
Love lost.
That's right. He takes his wedding ring off. Right. So she says, "Why do you smell like fish?" And he says, "I was eating herring."
Right.
And she says, "With your fingers." Right. Well, that's where he puts in the cloaca of the fish girls, and that's also what Golden bites off of him towards the end of the movie. She literally bites off his violating finger. So it's just, there's so much crazy stuff in this movie, and it's really exhilarating and strange and fun, but also it's really moving.
Well, yes. And again, 100% different than what I expected. And then when you do the deep dive after, because I want to read, I want to find out what, and then you find out that there's all this layers of meaning, like women in Poland and workers in Poland, and why it was shot in the 80s, like you said, why the 80s? Well, there's a reason why it was the 80s, and how female empowerment became such a big deal, and that she's using these mermaids as a way to express that, and how people were following them, but ultimately, the one mermaid turns into sea foam, the other one goes back in the water, and she's happier in the water. She doesn't want to be around human beings because...
Well, is she happier because she end lost of the her movie companion is an empty ocean, and there are corpses and loneliness left behind.
Well, it's funny, that song that they sing during that, all that's down here is car parts and...
Oh, yeah.
That's the thing about the music being some of it. And again, it might've been the translation, but like that scene we're talking about where they're either poisoned or waking up from a bad hangover. I don't quite get what was going on, but the music is saying, "We put poison in you." Well, who put poison in you? Did the girls, did the mermaids poison these people? Cause their times are, so again, you have to kind of, as a viewer, I'm a very, simple viewer, right? I can't get lost in trying to figure out what the subtext is because it confuses me, and then I got to move on. But but by the end of this, it was kind of mind blowing. And then you think about the color palette and the stuff that they did and the music numbers, and it's like, this is pretty ambitious. And
it's very ambitious.
I'm glad
That's
I
one
saw
of the
it, and
reasons
I would like
it,
more
yeah.
people to see it. And you wrap into that the whole Hans Christian Andersen, and the fact that Disney did a Little Mermaid and totally Americanized this whole Little Mermaid thing, and it's really kind of a cruel, horrible story about if you take the legs, you're going to walk on sea glass all the. I mean,
as most fairy tales originally are, they're brutal, and violent and scary.
And then we
this
turn
one
them
is
into
one of
these-
those too.
Yeah. Well,
it's at a certain point, I guess, adults decided maybe children shouldn't read stories that are that dark, except that that's a way to learn that the world is full of danger and pain without experiencing danger and pain. So you're not completely shocked when you come out of your bubble and nobody and people don't love you exactly the same way that they do in the stories, or people don't care about you or that sort of stuff. It's just the world is harsh. The world is full of attractive young women with teeth who will tear your heart out. And that's just the world. That's just animals. And the movie
that was the
does
other
not
thing.
pull any punches with that.
That was the other thing I read. It's an allegory about teenage girls who underestimate their power on men specifically, and or really can be quite vicious and innocent at the same time. They really have no sense of, and that's the one mermaid who falls in love and then turns into sea foam at the end was a total innocent, to the point, like you said, where she had her tail amputated and put human legs on because she loved the guy and he rejected her after she did all that.
That scene is insane.
Yeah.
You're watching the movie and you know what you're going to see, and you're like, well, I guess they're going to cut. Oh no, they're not cutting. But it doesn't become a scene where you go, oh, that's just super gross horror movie gore.
No, it's not like
her
that.
Her voice vanishes. She's in the middle of singing, and her voice disappears when the bone saw or whatever starts slicing her body in half. Like it's the exact moment where she gives up everything. And then later you see that she has you see the body of another woman is stitched onto her, different skin tone, different shape. And that's what she reveals to Metek, and he tries to have sex with her and he gets blood all over himself, and then he basically never talks to her again and marries someone else. Yeah. So,
but the other thing we're not talking about is there was a woman next to her who was having her legs amputated and putting the mermaid.
It was a trade. It was a trade, and that that just kind of came out of nowhere. But I think that's reasonable in a sense, because these mermaid characters are driven by curiosity. What is outside of our world? What is in this world of people?
Okay, but what about the woman who was losing her leg? Where did she?
No, I'm saying I guess there are humans. I guess there are humans.
Oh, maybe.
Maybe she fell in love with a merman or a mermaid, and this was her way of going to him. Like it could be the intersection of two similar stories, because they both have some brutal things done to them, but obviously they want them very badly. So the mermaid gets human legs and the human gets mermaid tail. And I know that Silver, the human-legged mermaid, doesn't end happily. I can't imagine that the other one went well either.
Yeah, is she going to drown? So. But in this movie world, though, people believe in mermaids. So
yeah, no, mermaids are real. Like, everybody thinks it's so incredibly cool when these two women get into a giant martini glass and these tails grow and they start clapping, and it's amazing. Nobody says this isn't really happening. It's a trick. Right. They live in this wonder, which also may tell you this is how dark their lives are. I mean, there's no part of this movie outside of the glamour of the nightclub where you say, that looks like a nice place to live. That looks like a pretty city.
Yeah, no.
It's run down. There's not a lot of color there, which is, I think, how the filmmakers feel about growing up at the end of communist Poland. Yeah. These are people that grew up in the 80s. These are people who are now in their 40s, and they're telling these stories from their youth. And it's very, like I said, I feel left out of some of it because I'm not Polish, and it's very Polish, but I felt like I learned a lot about it. Yeah. And I went to Warsaw when I was 1992, when I was 16 on a trip to Poland and then to Israel. And, it's fascinating to see another city that looks the same but has a totally different history, and it has familiar things and different stories. And the movie is just another inside look at life in a different city. Like Possession is a look at a version of Berlin in the same era.
Yeah. Well, and it definitely fits our MovieStrange thing. This was a strange movie. I mean,
Yes.
really, if you pray, it's just a strange film, and beautiful. And
I'm glad you liked it.
well, I'm open. I'm open to films. It's not like I'm opposed. It just I get lost in some of the subtext and stuff and get frustrated. Because it's whatever for whatever reason. But this one got me at the end, and it was touching at the end when the one mermaid decides she's not going to bite him, and you feel genuine emotion for her, and she was sad, but she was so happy, and I knew what was going to happen next. I knew that the sister or whatever she was going to jump on him, and it was over. And I kind of don't blame her. I don't blame her.
The thing is, that's not how the original story ends, but if you read the original story,
the original mermaid story, Little Mermaid,
the original Little Mermaid story, you might ultimately think, man, she should have killed that prince who ignored her and then caused her to die. Maybe it would be cool if somebody else punished him. Well, the prince in this case, Metek, he's responsible for the death of Silver, and then Golden punishes him immediately, and it's actually kind of satisfying. I mean, she's driven by grief and sadness and rage, and I believe all of it. So.
Well, she lost her companion too. This is somebody she's been, whoever, sister or whatever. They do that scene where they get in a fight and they end up in a nursery rhyme and they're spinning around in that room, and a lot of interesting.
Her sister chose to leave her for love of someone that wasn't worth it. That's pretty upsetting.
Yeah. Anyway, wow, good film. Good film. I mean,
good. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Freaky film, definitely fits our category, and I'm glad I saw it. And the fact that it's on Criterion and there's extra scenes, there's all kinds of stuff that you kind of dive into. And I started doing offshoots, going and reading some other stuff. So very good, very good. All right, well, thank you.
So you're welcome. This was the right show to bring it to. This wouldn't have been good on Yippee-Ki-Yay or
I can't. I think out of that group, I think Debbie would have appreciated it the most. To be honest,
I think we'll have to tell her to watch it and watch this episode.
I think so. The other one, my brother John, although he just told me he loved Squid Games or something. Is that on Netflix?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Which surprised me. So,
well, I considered asking him to join us for this because it's a musical, and I know he loves movie musicals.
I didn't think about going at it that way.
He was just on for Fight Club, and I do want him to talk to me again. So I feel like maybe that
might do it through movies.
To not have him
talking
join us.
through film. All right, let's see. Okay, so here are that's from last time. All right, we'll get rid of these.
I mean, you can watch the lore again, but I don't think we should talk about it again.
I liked it, but okay.
No, me too.
Robert Smith, Nazi hunter. Study conditioning absolute control. I think I know this one, so I'm gonna pick this one. I'm gonna pick because I have a strange. Okay, what is this one?
Well, what do you think it is?
There's a movie I saw about I can't remember the name of it, but a bunch of people were in a classroom, and it was basically somebody's gonna die or they all die. I forget, but it's about training people through a classroom. But I don't remember.
That could be a bunch of different movies. There's a couple different versions of a movie that is not the movie that you picked, called The Wave, about a teacher teaching how fascism works to his students by essentially roping them into fascism, sort of like the Milgram experiment and the German movie.
That's the one I did not pick. Or is that the one I picked?
That's one that is not. That's not either of them.
I see. It
sounds like it.
Okay.
Now, what you did pick is a movie called The Killing Room, which is a tiny little movie with Peter Stormare, Chloe Sevigny, Timothy Hutton, and a shockingly good, I can't even believe this is true, Nick Cannon, about people who are invited to a study group for some sort of intelligence test type of thing, and where it goes from there. And it is a really kind of crazy, tight, surprising thriller. Half of the surprise for me is watching it and thinking, "Oh my God, Nick Cannon is really good."
Who's Nick Cannon?
And
is he a singer?
He's the one who hosts. He's a singer, and he was married to Mariah Carey, and he hosts Wild and Out on MTV and America's Got Talent.
Oh,
and
that guy. I know. Okay.
He's been in movies, but he hasn't been in serious roles, dramas, thrillers, that kind of stuff. Oh, and Clea Duvall is in it as well. She's great. So it's
called The Killing
Room.
Mm-hmm.
The Killing Room from not too long ago.
Okay.
And I know you're a big fan of Peter Stormare, and I think you will very much enjoy him in this film.
Yeah, he's always good. Weird and good.
Yep.
Always. The only one he wasn't weird in was Jurassic Park, or the second one, where it's like, why is he in this one? You know, he gets his demise, but he's a dick in that one too.
Yeah. Well, sometimes he's tender and caring, and he helps you with a demon up your butt. And sometimes he's tired of how you run your mouth, and he shoves you in a wood chipper.
Oh, that's right. He's shoving you in a wood chipper.
He contains multitudes.
Right. And he played a great devil in Constantine.
Yes, he did.
He was really good.
I think you'll see this movie, and then you'll decide which of those roles his performance is closer to.
Really,
but this is a tiny little movie that I don't think found the audience it deserved.
I can't wait to see it.
And it's just fun.
Can I stream it, or is it out there? Where
I'll let you know. I'll find out the best way for you to watch it.
Dig it up. Let me know. All right, good one. Well, listen, I loved the lore, and you were exactly right that it was 100% opposite of what I was expecting. And it did get me interested in the Hans Christian Andersen Little Mermaid stuff, and then the Polish, the Polish sensibilities, directed by a woman. Just fantastic. So I really appreciate it. The music was catchy too. It had a little catch. Started with a Donna Summer song. I mean, you can't go wrong.
I do want to apologize for not mentioning most of the actors and filmmakers' names, because I just feel like I would do a terrible injustice to the pronunciation, and they deserve better than that.
Go watch the movie. Look at them. Yeah,
watch the movie.
A lot of consonants, and there's not a lot of vowels in those names. So
there's some really, I think, pretty fascinating people behind the movie, and I think they deserve to have their names pronounced.
Yeah, well, I was also fascinated with the fact that they're not used to horror movies in Poland. Like, there's a.
You were saying, yeah.
So, I mean, that's something I read. I don't know if it's actually true, but that's why there's the two posters I showed you, for that specific reason. So,
right.
I don't know. Anyway, good job. All right. Well, listen, have a good week, good 2 weeks, whatever it is. And then we'll get back and do the next one, and stay safe.
Thank you. Watch out for mermaids.
Let's go. They're out there. They sing beautifully, though.